In the heart of the medieval Balkans, a land of rugged mountains and winding rivers, legends were born. This was a time of kings and emperors, a time of shifting allegiances and sudden betrayals. It was an age where power was claimed not by birthright alone, but by the sharp edge of a sword and the unwavering will of a leader. Into this volatile world, a prince was born destined for greatness. His name was Stefan Uros, the fourth Dusan. He would rise from the ranks of Serbian royalty to become one of the most formidable rulers of his era. A man whose ambition knew no bounds and whose military genius would carve out an empire from the heart of a fractured Europe. His story is not one of peaceful diplomacy. It is a saga written in the heat of battle and the clash of steel. Dusan was a product of his time, a period defined by constant warfare and the struggle for dominance. The Balkans were a crossroads of civilizations, a fractured mosaic of competing kingdoms and ailing empires. The mighty Byzantine Empire, once the master of the East, was in a slow, agonizing decline. To the north, the Kingdom of Hungary watched with ambitious eyes, and within Serbia itself, powerful nobles vied for influence, their loyalties as shifting as the winds that swept across the plains. This was the crucible that would shape a young prince into a legendary conqueror and a future emperor. From a young age, Dusan was immersed in the world of war and politics. He was the son of King Stefan Uros, the third Dušanski, a ruler who had himself fought to secure his throne. The young prince learned early that power was a precarious thing, easily lost to a rival or a stronger neighbour. He witnessed the brutal realities of medieval statecraft, where a moment of weakness could lead to utter ruin. He studied the art of war not just from dusty scrolls, but on the training grounds and eventually on the battlefield itself. Every campaign, every skirmish, every whispered rumour of war in the royal court was a lesson, shaping his understanding of military strategy and the psychology of his enemies. This was the world that demanded strength. It was a world that rewarded audacity and punished hesitation. The political landscape was a treacherous chessboard, and Dusan learned to play the game with ruthless efficiency. He saw the weakness in his neighbours and the ambition in his own heart. He understood that to survive, Serbia had to do more than simply defend its borders. It had to expand. It had to dominate. It had to become an empire. The stage was set for a dramatic and bloody chapter in Balkan history, and at its centre stood a young prince with a vision of conquest that would forever change the map of the region. The Balkans in the early 14th century were a cauldron of conflict. The once unquestioned authority of the Byzantine Empire was crumbling, racked by civil wars, internal decay, and the relentless pressure of the rising Ottoman Turks in Anatolia. Byzantium was a shadow of its former self. Its vast territories had shrunk, its armies were depleted, and its emperors often found themselves as pawns. This power vacuum created a volatile and unpredictable environment. It was an opportunity for new powers to rise from the ashes of the old. Many were eager to seize their chance for glory and expansion. To the north lay the formidable Kingdom of Hungary. To the west lay the Republic of Venice. Hungary, a Catholic powerhouse. It saw the Orthodox Balkans as a buffer and a potential sphere of influence. Venice, the maritime republic, controlled the Adriatic coast. Its interests were purely commercial but fiercely defended. These powers constantly meddled, forging alliances, funding rebellions, and seeking to exploit divisions between Slavic and Greek rulers. For a rising state like Serbia, navigating those ambitions was a delicate, dangerous balancing act, requiring diplomatic cunning and military might. Caught between these larger forces were the Balkan states themselves, the Second Bulgarian Empire, a traditional rival to Serbia and Byzantium. It was also facing its own internal struggles. Its power waxed and waned, but it remained a significant player in the region. To the south, in what is now Greece, Latin despotates held former Crusader lands. Greek despotates clung to Byzantine strongholds. Remnants of the Fourth Crusade dotted the landscape. These small states often switched allegiance between the Serbs, the Byzantines, and other powers. It was a land of constant, low-level warfare, borders fluid and loyalties for sale. In this chaotic arena, the kingdom of Serbia under the Nemanjic dynasty had been steadily growing. For generations its rulers had expanded their territory, developed rich silver mines, and fostered a strong sense of national and religious identity. They had built magnificent monasteries and established a court that rivaled others in Europe. But they were still a regional power, overshadowed by the legacy of Byzantium and the might of Hungary. It would take a ruler of extraordinary ambition and military skill to break free from these constraints, a leader who could unite the Serbian lands and lead them on a path of unprecedented conquest. That leader would be Stefan Dušan. The year is 1330. A shadow of war falls across the Struma River valley. The Bulgarian Tsar, Michael Shishman, the Byzantine Emperor Andronikos III Palaiologos. Their goal is simple and brutal. They plan to crush the rising power of Serbia with a coordinated two-pronged attack. It is a moment of extreme peril for the Serbian kingdom. King Stefan Dušan gathers his army. He places his trust in his most capable commander, his son, Prince Stefan Dušan. This is his first true test, a crucible where his destiny will be forged. The two armies meet near the town of VELBAZHD, modern-day Kyustendil. The air is thick with tension. The Bulgarian force is formidable, bolstered by fierce foreign mercenaries. The Serbian king proposes a one-day truce, a pause for negotiation or to await reinforcements. Michael Shishman agrees, confident, a fatal miscalculation. He allows his army to disperse, to forage for supplies, underestimating Serbian resolve. Dušan waits, predator-like, for the moment to strike. As the sun climbs high on the 28th of July, the truce is shattered. King Stefan Dušan sees his moment. He unleashes his elite force of heavy cavalry. At their head charges Prince Dušan. He leads 1,300 mercenaries, German mercenaries, Catalan mercenaries. They crash into the disorganized Bulgarian lines like a thunderbolt. The surprise is total. The Bulgarian camp descends into chaos as soldiers scramble for their weapons. But it is too late. The Serbian armoured horsemen are among them, their lances and swords cutting a bloody path through the confusion. Dušan fights with the fury of a man possessed. He is not merely a prince commanding from the rear. He is a warrior in the heart of the melee. He seeks out the Bulgarian Tsar himself, fighting his way through the chaos of the battlefield. The battle turns into a rout. The Bulgarian army, caught completely off guard, breaks and flees. Tsar Michael Shishman is thrown from his horse in the desperate retreat. He is captured by Serbian soldiers and, according to most accounts, dies from his wounds shortly after. The victory is absolute. It is a stunning display of tactical brilliance and brutal efficiency. At its very centre is the young prince, Stefan Dušan, his reputation now sealed in blood and victory. The victory at VELBAZHD makes Serbia the dominant Balkan power and Prince Dušan a hero. Adored by the army and nobility, his ambition burns fiercely, but his father, King Stefan Dušan, is cautious, preferring peace over further conquest. A rift grows between them, fueled by ambitious nobles who see Dušan as the key to new lands and contrast his youthful energy with the king's perceived timidity. By 1331, the nobles give Dušan an ultimatum: lead a rebellion or be cast aside. Torn between loyalty and ambition, he agrees to march against his own father. The coup is swift. Dušan seizes the capital and his father surrenders. The deposed king is imprisoned and dies shortly after, some say strangled on Dušan's orders, a dark stain of patricide. On September 8, 1331, Stefan Dušan is crowned king of all Serbian and maritime lands. The rebel has won, but his crown is shadowed by his father's tragic end. With his crown secured, King Stefan Dušan turned his gaze outward. To forge an empire, he transformed Serbia's military. The old levy system was replaced by a professional war machine, elite heavy cavalry inspired by Western knights and foreign mercenaries loyal only to him for pay. This new army was built for conquest, and Dušan found his opportunity in the Byzantine Empire, which was collapsing into a bitter civil war. He masterfully allied with the claimant John Kantakouzenos. The deal was simple. Dušan's army would fight for him, and Dušan would keep any city he conquered. This gave him the perfect pretext for invasion. Many confused Byzantine cities surrendered without a fight. When the alliance inevitably crumbled, it no longer mattered. Dušan's armies were deep in Byzantine lands. and the conquest continued in his own name. Dušan's military was a modern, combined arms force. Armoured knights were his hammer, supported by disciplined infantry and archers. Crucially, he invested heavily in siege technology, trebuchets, towers and engineers. This was the army of a conqueror who came to take and hold territory. In 1342, with the Byzantine civil war as his cover, Dušan unleashed his armies on Macedonia. He marched as an ally, and city after city fell, choosing Serbian stability over Byzantine chaos. His heavy cavalry crushed any opposition in the field. By the end of 1343, Macedonia was his, severing Constantinople from its western territories. The pretense of alliance was over. In 1345, he laid siege to Serbs, the jewel of eastern Macedonia. The siege was an epic showcase of his military machine, imposing a suffocating blockade and a relentless months-long bombardment. Facing starvation, the city surrendered. It was a monumental victory, won through overwhelming force and strategic patience. With Serbs in his hands, Dušan launched a lightning campaign south into the anarchic regions of Thessaly and Epirus. His armies swept through in 1347 and 1348. By the end of 1348, a vast swathe of the Greek mainland was under his control. He appointed trusted governors, integrating the new lands into his state. He was not just conquering territory, he was building a multinational empire with a speed and efficiency that left his contemporaries in awe. Looking back at the campaigns between 1342 and 1348, one sees the mind of a master strategist at work. His military genius was not just about winning individual battles. It was about his grand vision and his ability to orchestrate complex, multi-pronged operations across the Balkans. He fought on multiple fronts simultaneously, yet his campaigns never seemed disjointed. He would personally lead the main thrust, the siege of Serbs. He would dispatch trusted lieutenants like Preljub to open new fronts. Dušan was an innovator, not content with traditional ways of war. He adopted Western-style heavy cavalry. He hired mercenary professionals. He integrated them into a new Serbian army. He invested in siege technology. That adaptability gave him a decisive technological and tactical edge. His genius was the synthesis of these elements. He was a brave frontline warrior. He was a shrewd grand strategist. He was a cunning diplomat. He was a forward-thinking military reformer. He combined heavy cavalry's brute force with subtle political manipulation. He knew how to conquer territory, but also how to govern and integrate it into a functioning state. These conquests were not accidents. They were the result of years of preparation and a brilliant overarching strategy by one of the Middle Ages' great military minds. The conquest of Serbs was more than just a military victory. It was a symbolic triumph of immense significance. His realm stretched from the Danube River in the north to the Gulf of Corinth in the south, the Adriatic coast in the west, and the Nestos River in the east. He was no longer merely a king of the Serbs. He ruled over a vast and diverse population of Serbs, Greeks, Albanians, Vlachs. His conquests demanded a new title. The title of king was no longer sufficient. Dušan envisioned a new empire to succeed the ailing Byzantines. He saw himself not as a barbarian destroyer of the old order, but as its rightful heir. He believed it was his destiny to take up the mantle of imperial power and to create a new, vigorous Romano-Slavic empire. To do this, he needed the ultimate validation. He needed to be crowned emperor. An emperor could only be crowned by a patriarch. In late 1345, he convened an assembly at Skopje, his chosen capital. He proclaimed the archbishopric a full patriarchate. Easter Sunday, the 16th of April, 1346, in Skopje, a grand ceremony took place. Before Serbian patriarchs, Bulgarian patriarchs, bishops and the highest nobles, Stefan Dušan was crowned. He took the title Emperor and Autocrat of the Serbs and Greeks. It was the culmination of his life's work. The young prince who had fought at VELBAZHD, the rebel who overthrew his father, the conqueror who humbled the Byzantines, now wore the imperial crown. He was no longer just Stefan Dušan, king of Serbia. He was Tsar Dušan, the ruler of a new empire that stood as the dominant power in the Balkans. An empire cannot be held by the sword alone. To govern his diverse realm, Emperor Dušan created a unifying legal framework, his most enduring legacy, Dušan's Code. Proclaimed in 1349, it was one of medieval Europe's most advanced legal documents, a testament to his vision for a well-ordered state. By 1355, the Serbian Empire was a prosperous superpower dominating southeastern Europe. Yet, Dušan's grandest ambition remained unfulfilled, the capture of Constantinople. At the zenith of his power, he gathered his army for the final campaign, but it was not to be. While marching towards the city, the mighty emperor suddenly fell ill and died. His death was catastrophic. The empire, held together by his personal strength, proved fragile. Under his weak heir, the vast structure disintegrated almost as quickly as it had been assembled. Dušan's legacy is a dual one. Serbia's greatest ruler, but also a cautionary tale of an empire that could not survive its creator. Soon the rising Ottoman Turks would sweep into the Balkans, swallowing the fractured remnants of his empire. The conqueror was gone, and his world was swept away. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of ancient legends and warriors, check out our official store at bladesoflegendsofficial.com. You'll find apparel and gear inspired by the great civilizations of the past, made for true history enthusiasts. By supporting the store, you're also helping this channel grow and bring more legendary content to life. Dress like a legend. Live like a warrior.